Hey guys, welcome to Cricket Fanatics Magazine. It is cold. I've got a headache, but I needed to come here and give you guys a show. I'm not gonna not appear for this one. This is the Friday Q&A session where you guys get an opportunity to ask me questions, and I'll try my best to answer them as best as possible. So I apologize in advance if I'm a little bit like down-ish. Yeah, my head is throbbing. It's ice cold as well, and I'm gonna try my best to get through the show as long as possible, as long as my eyes can take this light, of course. Um, but before we get going, before we get started, there's a couple of things I'd like you guys to please do. First and foremost, please subscribe to the magazine and click that notification bell. Also, download the latest issue of the Cricket Fanatics magazine monthly. Every issue is 100% free, straight to your inbox every month. The link is on the screen as well as in the description. If you subscribe now, you'll get access to every single issue as well as get notified for when the next issue is available. We are aiming to get the next issue out to you guys by Monday. So please get your subscriptions now so that you can get the new issues. There are some excellent interviews in that next issue from into exclusives from Rob Walter, Shukri Conrad, and Payas Swanepoel, Matthew Brzezinski. So please go ahead and go and download that next issue as well. We're also trying to get an exclusive with Laura Wolfart for that issue as well, which is busy being in production at the moment. So please go and get your latest issue. It's very important that you do so and get every single issue 100% free as well. You'll gain access to it as soon as you subscribe. What I also need you guys to please do is subscribe to this channel as well. If you are new to this channel, please subscribe, click that notification bell for all future videos as well. Smash the like button, comment, and share. This is your Q&A session. This is where you guys get to ask me questions in the live chat. Let's see how many of you guys join the show and ask me questions, and I'll try my best to answer them. There hasn't really been much in the news with regards to cricket in recent times. So I'll just start talking until you guys ask me questions, and we'll see where we end up and how long I can last on this particular show. So let's get straight into it. Evening, everybody, and welcome to Cricket Fanatics Magazine. This is your Q&A session, Friday Q&A session, part of the daily show. I'm your host, Khalid Mahidin, and this is the show where we answer all of your questions surrounding different topics. That might be cricket, it might not be non-cricket related, and that's what we're going to be doing on today's show. Now, you guys might pick up that I'm a little bit under the weather at the moment. I've got a throbbing headache, don't know why. I'm trying to recover from that. I have taken a tablet and it's going to make me drowsy at some point. So just bear with me as long as I can hold out on this particular show. As long as my eyes can handle this light that is obviously shining on me right now. But yeah, so this is the Q&A session. So you guys get to give me your questions in the live chat and I'll try my best to answer them. But there is a specific thing that I would like to talk about on today's show, just to get things going until you guys get your questions in. I'd like to talk a little bit about women's cricket because I think that there's something that we need to start talking about, which I haven't really covered on shows quite yet. We've been losing a hell of a lot of experienced players over the last year. So Mignon Dupree has retired, Lizal Lee has retired. Dane van Niekerk has retired, and we are also we also know from our interview with Shabnim Ismail at the CSA Watch, she has retired too. So we are losing a lot of experienced players within that setup. First and foremost, I want to first say that with regards to the women's setup, we are going to be going into a revolution, in my opinion, because I'm just looking from the outside. And looking in and seeing what has transpired over the last couple of years. We've been in semifinals, we've been in a final. I mean, a lot of people didn't believe that the women would make that final here in South Africa when the World Cup was here in South Africa. We didn't. Some people didn't think that they'd make that final and get an opportunity to take on Australia, who have won many, many, many trophies in the past. The setup is professional. They've got a lot. They've got a winning mentality. They've been really consistent in all formats for their country. So it has been quite interesting to see how the women's team would compete, because I mean it's been a long time in this country. We had to wait before women started getting paying decent enough salaries for them to become professionals within the women's game. But it, besides the new players coming in, um, management at the moment has pretty much stayed the same. I mean, Hilton Moreng has been there for the last 10 years, and um, there has been a sense of understanding that I've gotten from talking to certain fans when I spoke about the women's game, that they maybe need something fresh or something new. I mean, with a new regime, if there's going to be a new regime coming through, so it's possible that we could change things. But also on the flip side, I can understand if CSA decide to keep the current regime, because there were rumors about the job being up for grabs at some point, and then it ended up not happening. Um, that didn't end up happening in the at the end of the day. They kept Hilton on, and he took us to a final. So is it the right time to change guard now that these old people that the now that the new regime is coming into the fray and the more experienced players have left? Would it be the right time now to bring in a new management team or a coach, etc.? I don't know what the right answer to that is. Um, we might um, need to go in a different direction in the future if we want to actually try and win a World Cup. Um, Hilton has had plenty of time to actually try and bring us a trophy, and it still hasn't happened. So, at what point do we change things up and take things forward, and revolutionize the women's team? That is a question that I'd like to put out to you guys when it comes to the women's team, and whether that is a possible option or not. Because from certain interviews I've had and interviews I've had with certain players, it does seem like it didn't seem necessarily like they were against the idea of maybe getting taking the game to the next level. And everybody that I've spoken to has always said that they want to try to improve, they want to take the game to the next level, they want to become more professional, etc., etc., etc. So yeah, that's maybe me just reading into things a little bit too much. Um, I don't know, but that's the women's game is being in a great space at the moment. Actually, when it comes to that, I mean, bringing besides the drama that has happened between certain senior players in the past, I think that this team is starting to really build a blueprint and a winning mentality and a togetherness that is something to be admired. I mean, they're a team that have a sponsor, unlike the men's team, and they're getting a lot of young, fresh, new talent into the system from the domestic scene. We also have seen a brilliant support structure as well with regards to the S under 19 women's team that has really made us proud at their World Cup, in their first World Cup. And under Danesha, they've really built an amazing professional unit there for the next generation of youngsters to come through, and then obviously to be the feeder to the national side. So yeah, the women's game is structured nicely. It's just now with regards to the Proteas team, do we move on? Because normally when we get to a certain stage, when a coach has been in charge for a certain amount of years, and this is like a nice time to talk about it because it's been after 10 years. So it will be a nice time to actually speak about, do you stay with him or do you move on from him? I think that's the type of talk that always happens in any professional sports people's career. We could see that with De Gea, for example, from Manchester United, as the keeper. He was the keeper there for like 12 years, and then Eric Ten Hag came out and he said it's a time in a professional's career where you start to think, do you move on or do you stay? What are the benefits? What are negatives surrounding that. So that's just something I thought I should bring out to you guys as well. Tabo's come in the live chat and he said, please talk about the West Indies cricket. What a fall from grace. My parents and my grandparents used to tell me stories of how dominant they were, and now they are mediocre, and it's sad. Yeah, I think that the rise of T20 cricket, and I'm going to speak about it over and over again, the rise of T20 domestic cricket, T20 domestic tournaments, I think really affected the West Indian players. When the T20 regime started, it was shortly surrounding the time when the West Indies won the T20 World Cup. They've produced a hell of a lot of T20 players. And when you look at any T20 league, majority of the time it's the West Indians that get picked up first, generally speaking. That's normally what happens when any T20 tournament happens and originates, because we can see that majority of the tournaments that we've had, the Mzansi Super League, SA20, IPL, and others, I mean, with regards to the CPL, that's their own one. But in almost every single league in the world, there's always West Indian talent getting picked up. And that gave them a earning potential that was way higher than what they would earn from their national contracts. We started to see a lot of players actually leave their national team and just become T20 players, or just become T20 mercenaries, you can say, and also just play T20 or white ball cricket for their country and leave the test game, for example. So the West Indian team has been really struggling for a very, very long time, and something needs to change there to revive it again. A lot of these T20 tournaments are starting to really tempt players to go and play that full time, and rather than playing for their country. And we have to also take into consideration what the board is doing. I mean, whenever anything goes wrong in South African cricket, we always blame the board. We always say it's CSA's fault. So I think the West Indian Cricket Board needs to also, to an extent, come under fire for the things that are happening within the sport. Ahmed says it's all about the cricket board. If the cricket board is messed up, all the potential goes away. Yeah, but it's also the responsibility of the players too. I mean, they also need to have the um, make the decision on whether they want to stay or whether they want to go and go play T20 leagues. I can understand how you can be how money can obviously um, how money can actually tempt you away from international cricket. But in my opinion, I don't think that should ever be an issue. I think that you play for your country for pride, and I think yes, money is obviously going to come into the fold, but it should be your country first. That's how things should be. Thank you for the super sticker, Neil Govender, back again with the super stickers and the super chats. Thanks a lot, bro. That means a hell of a lot to me. It really helps. Every single bit that you guys donate to the channel will go back into the business, go back into technology to make these streams better, and all of those type of things. Gorav says, why ticket prices for the match is too much still compared to SA20? I think SA20, I mean, the thing is, SA20 almost can guarantee sold out stadiums every single match. I mean, majority of the games that I went to, for example, I traveled to Joburg to cover and Pretoria to cover the Pretoria Capitals and as well as the Joburg Super Kings. Um, and the teams that they played against, and the semi-final legs as well of the tournament, as well as the final. I went to the last leg of JSK and the last game of Pretoria Capitals, and then I went to the semi-finals, both semi-finals, the one at Supersport Park, one at Johannesburg at Wanderers, and then I went to the final at Wanderers as well. And every single game that I attended was sold out. When I covered the games here in Cape Town as well, my Cape Town as well as Boland Park, all of those games were sold out too. So I never went to a SA20 game that wasn't packed. But when I see the Proteas play and I watch and I go to some of the games that they are involved in, T20s, ODIs, majority as well as tests. The T20 seem to sell out pretty well, but the ODIs and the test matches don't. It doesn't. There's normally not a full stadium when it comes to that. Now, Test cricket, to an extent, I can understand because when the games are played, or sometimes during it starts during the week, and then it runs into the weekend. And when Test matches get played in South Africa, it's 10 o'clock in the morning, finish around 5:30, and to between 5:30 and 6:30, dependable on what province you're in. If, between 5:30 and 6 o'clock, or 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock, you can give that hour. So that's normally when people are at work, so they don't really get the opportunity to take off work to go watch Test cricket. So I think that might be because they really, really need the money, CSA. I think that has a lot to do with the ticket prices hiking and being raised as they have been. Um, we don't seem to sell out stadiums when it comes to Test and ODI cricket. But when it comes to T20 cricket, we we do a pretty good job with selling our tickets for that. Why aren't fans coming to watch international matches compared to the league? I think it's got to do with the success of the team. If I don't know, if you're not from South Africa, right? You won't know the the trends that seem to happen. Now, I've looked across sports, right? And I've had a look at what's been happening in multiple sports in South Africa. Whenever a team is struggling or is not doing well, particularly the national teams I'm talking about here. But you can see it, for example, in rugby. I'll give you an example. I remember when the Boks weren't this world beating, when they go through a slump. They've won the World Cup, and then they kind of go through a slump, and then they build their way up to the World Cup again, have a good World Cup or a bad World Cup, dependable on how that World Cups go or the tri nations go. It really affects the audience that attends these games. So there was a period, and people seem to forget that there was a period between the World Cups where South Africa weren't that dominant. The South African rugby team wasn't that dominant box team that we know that won the World Cup. And what tended to happen as well is that it filtered down into our Super Rugby season when it was still called Super Rugby. For the first time in my life of being as a rugby supporter, I can't remember the exact year, but for the first time in my life, I went to games and it wasn't sold out. Newlands was empty. I mean, you go to watch a match between South Africa and, for example, I mean, the Stormers and Crusaders, or the Blues, etc., which is supposed to be a big draw card and always has been. The stadiums used to be empty. There weren't a lot of people in the stadium at Newlands at the time when it was still at Newlands, and that was a shock to me, because that was the first time that I saw that rugby wasn't being supported as much as it used to be. And it was during, it's not a coincidence that it was during the period where South African rugby wasn't doing well, the Boks weren't doing well, etc. South African cricket, when AB de Villiers and all of those guys were in the mix, we were always competing for World Cups. We were always around, in and around there. We always had the number one ranked team in one of the divisions, either Test cricket or one of those formats, or ODI cricket. So stadiums tended to be sold out back then because we had these superstars and we were winning games. And I've seen a common trend with regards to South Africans when it comes to that. Support, we are great supporters. We have a great fan base, etc., and we always come out when our team is doing well, and we want to be behind our team. We always rally behind them and we support them big time. But when they are not doing well and they're going through slumps, then I tend to see a dip in support when it comes to those teams, and that's just my observation of it when it comes to certain things. Um, we can't compare football. I think football is a different beast in South Africa because majority of the country watches football. Um, so it's a different beast. But we can see how we treat the national soccer team, what people say about them online, what people think about them. A lot of people just see it as a joke team that's never going to win anything because we've never actually won anything. So it does make it hard to support a team from the South African fans' perspective, but I have noticed the dip. I think if the South African national team look at the Women's World Cup, we sold out stadiums for the Women's World Cup because the women's team was doing really well, regardless of the levels that some people say that the standard or the level isn't the same as the men's game and all of that. Besides all of that, we had cricket fans flocking to stadiums and selling out semi-finals and a final and games at Newlands, which is something that was unheard of a couple of years ago. And I think it's got a lot to do with the success of the team. The women's team was performing and doing well, and as a result, people came to watch the game. Ilya says missing South African play cricket. I'm also missing it, bro. We have to make these filler shows in between when there's no cricket, and because there's no currently no cricket happening in South Africa, we're waiting for the season to start. It's like the middle of winter. Neil Governor saying it's annoying watching James Anderson because I think Steyn was better bowler, but England and ECB protected him and Broad, and we didn't protect our great bowlers as well. And where do you rate them? Okay, so I don't rate England as highly as some may. Um, I think they're beatable. Um, I think that some teams might get intimidated by England, but I think that um, if you come with a game plan and you stick to your game plan and you put pressure on England, you can rattle them. Look at Australia. Australia really rattled England at the beginning of this Ashes tour. Yes, England came back like they always will come back fighting. But at the end of the day, you can rattle them. I mean, we beat them in the ODI series to qualify for the World Cup, to help us qualify for the World Cup. So it is possible to beat them. I know it might be intimidating that they want to play this attacking brand of cricket, but if you can find ways to make it difficult for them to just come out and play their game, because they don't seem to change up their game um, very easily. They really need to be in trouble for them to do that. So I don't really rate them that like as the best team in the world. I think they're beatable. Um, I think that Australia is probably the hardest team to beat because they just have especially when it comes out to knockout games, important games, World Cup games, etc. They just find a way to win every single time, even if their personnel is not necessarily the best that they've ever produced. Now I've seen that there's been a debate online recently. It's been resurfaced again. It always seems to resurface when is made. I think the debate on whether Steyn is better than Anderson or Anderson's the best bowler in the world has gone around for quite some time. Now, I'm gonna make a note here when I'm saying this. A lot of people gave Stokes stick for saying that Anderson is the best bowler of all time. I don't understand that, because the reason I say that is I doubt Ben Stokes is going to talk badly about a player that he's captain of, that is currently in his team, that is currently playing for him. I don't think he's going to sit in that environment in front of a press and say that anybody else is better than Anderson. I don't think that is a smart move by any captain by all means. I think we need to wait for Stokes to retire and for James Anderson to retire for us to ask Stokes that question again on who the best bowler is in his opinion, because right now, when the guy's in this team environment, doesn't make sense for him to start saying Dale Steyn is the best bowler. Now, in my opinion, I might be biased, but in my opinion, I think Dale Steyn's better, and it's particularly because of his strike rate. His strike rate was ridiculous, and for the amount of games that he's played, the amount of wickets that he's taken, his average is also ridiculous. So strike rate's good, economy is good, and also what makes Dale Steyn so amazing is the ability to be able to bowl with different balls in different conditions, whether it's South Africa, whether it's in England, Australia, India, it doesn't matter where he is. He took wickets all around the globe, and he was successful in almost every single country that he visited. I don't think we can say the same for James Anderson. A lot of James Anderson's wickets, a bulk and majority of them, was taken with a Duke ball in England, where the conditions suit him best. So that is something we need to take into account. Because when you talk about, and this is an argument that we have in sport all the time, whether it be tennis, whether it be rugby, whether it be football, who is the GOAT? who is the greatest of all time. I think personally that the terms like the GOAT and greatest of all time is subjective. Certain players are you can't talk about an overall greatest of all time in things. I think you need to talk about a specific discipline and talk about a certain perspective. Because if you take, because it depends how you answer the question. Because if you're going to use wickets as an aspect of to say who is the greatest of all time from a seeming perspective, then you have to talk about Anderson. Then you have to call him if that is the metric that you're using to judge it. If you want to talk about strike rate, then Dale Stein's the best. If you want to talk about pace and all who was the fastest plus taking wickets, then Dale Steyn comes into account. So you need to when we make these statements about who's the greatest of all time, it's going to be subjective. You're going to take a liking to certain people or a certain player, and then if it's going to have to do with how much people have won, like for example, like the debate between who was the greatest of all time between Ronaldo and Messi has been going on for years, ever since I can remember. And now people say that Messi's clear because he's won the World Cup, he's won more Ballon d'Ors, and all of those type of things. But then when you look at Champions Leagues and you look at leagues titles and all of those type of things, then Ronaldo domestically is the better player. And when it comes to amount of goal scores scored, Ronaldo takes that list. So then what are we going to take? What measurements are we going to use when we're going to um, crown a greatest of all time? So for me personally, I don't like to get into those type of debates. I know that might be fence sitting, but I like to enjoy the player for who they are because every player is different. I mean, if you took if the two players were identically the same and they were going up against each other and they have the same attributes, they're playing in the same conditions, they have the same players around them, teammates wise, and they're competing for the greatest of all time title, then I could say yes, cool. That X person is the greatest of all time. I think in individual sports, it's a lot easier to measure that when it's just one person against the next. I mean, look at tennis, for example. People, regardless of how many titles Djokovic gets, even though he's clear from of all his predecessors, regardless of how many titles or Grand Slams he gets, people are still not regarding him as the greatest of all time. There are still pockets of people that still do not believe that to be true. They still are on Nadal and Federer train. So this debate becomes subjective very, very quickly because it depends on what metrics you use to analyze that. It's a, been a very it's been a very big gap, says Elias. Since COVID, less fans are coming to watch matches. Yeah, but I think it was happening before COVID already, bro. Like, I mean, I remember going to I think it was the series in 2018 when India came down here and we played in Durban, we played in Joburg, we had like 6 ODIs, I think, or 7 ODIs, 7 or 6 ODIs. I can't remember. I think it was 6 ODIs. I think it was 6 ODIs. And I went to Durban for games. Stadiums were empty. Like no one was watching. And we won that series. Um, so, oh, sorry, I'm lying. We lost that series. And it's interesting because I went to the test matches in certain stadiums, wasn't sold out. T20s, however, were sold out. It's got to do with the game as well. I think because our national team isn't the best in the world or competing at a constant level, at the highest level consistently, we see a drop in players. And if you look at COVID, it happened right around um, it happened very shortly after that terrible World Cup that we had in England, where we crashed out of the tournament early. We had a whole lot of drama happening on that particular tournament. And around about that time, COVID also came into the fold. So it was, we never left cricket. We never went into COVID with cricket in a great space. And then look at all the things from from a political standpoint that also happened within cricket, with Cricket South Africa, with the CEOs, with the SJN, with Black Lives Matter, and all of these things. It just put more water on the Protea fire. As it's just made it worse, and I think we will only rectify this the more we win. The more games we win, the better we play, the more successful the Proteas team becomes. I think the stadiums will start to become full as well because people want to watch a winning team ultimately. Any plans of going to the India for the World Cup? Well, that would require us to get a sponsor to be able to help us happen. It's a very expensive tour to India, and at the moment, I mean, we barely staying afloat at the moment with regards to doing all of this content and keeping the business going because we haven't gotten any sponsors in because the sponsors that have been offered are sponsors that I can't take because of obviously personal reasons. Um, and and what I believe in. So I can't take certain sponsors. So if we do get a sponsor, etc., and we do get a sponsor in, then it would be possible for us to for me to go to the World Cup and cover the World Cup. But at the moment, it's not financially feasible for me to be able to go to the World Cup. So yeah, between Don and DB, who would you pick? There is one open spot in T20 team. If you have to pick right now and no consideration given to bowling of both. And no consideration given to bowling of both. Donovan Ferreira or DB to pick for the T20 team. I'll go with DB. Um, I think DB has more experience internationally when it comes to international leagues currently. Um, and you see, you can't not take the bowling into account, but from that perspective, I think DB has currently he's younger. He's and also he has more experience in the T20 game around the world. And those are the reasons why I'll go with DB. Don is amazing, exceptional. I'd like to see another season. I would like to see him obviously be more consistent, etc. It's also another devastating player. And you can't not take that into consideration because they both bowl and Don keeps as well. Lichle says, aren't you shocked that since the new board administration at CSA came in, there have been no sponsors announced? I'm not shocked because it wasn't the new board that caused that. These things, the sponsors started pulling out during COVID and started pulling out during the SJN. If we want to be frank about it and honest about it, that's when the sponsors started really pulling out. And sponsors were talking about pulling out. I mean, we lost Standenberg before that already, before the new board was even, when the old board was still in charge. So it's going to take some time for this new board to present a proper a proper case to sponsors for them to want to sponsor the national team. Now, the women's team was managed to get a sponsor, and why? They're doing exceptionally well. They are they're a good team. They've got some superstars in the team that are well renowned. A lot of people know about. So there's obviously a reason for that. The women's game is growing and it's becoming more monetizable from a sponsor perspective because it ticks off every sponsor's boxes when it comes to gender equality and when it comes to the improvement of women's cricket in South Africa. When it becomes there's a project to invest in, there's a future for it. So there's a lot of sponsor because sponsors think about things. They're going to think about money. They're not just going to sponsor someone just for no reason. They're also going to look at the numbers. They're going to look at the potential. They're going to look at all of those type of things. And that's the way they're going to tick off and decide whether they're going to sponsor a team or not. Those boxes have to be ticked. Money needs to come back in for a sponsor to also put money in. They have to see a return on investment. So when it comes to the national cricket team for the Proteas at the moment, it's been a long time since we've won anything. I think a T20 World Cup or winning a World Cup will really rejuvenate cricket in South Africa. If we can just win one World Cup, it will really rejuvenate cricket in South Africa. We play Pakistan in 2025 in Jan, and that time SA20 will be there. So we will play C team like we are going to play against New Zealand. Now, I did speak to Enoch and I've asked him for an interview. We're going to speak again this weekend to finalize whether we're going to have that opportunity. He's been very busy this week. So I'll try to get him on the show next week, and then we can start asking him those questions. I'll give you guys opportunities to ask him any questions that you guys want. West Indies have territorial boards that do their own thing, and poor selection and coaching. Samuel Badri and Ian Bishop blasted CWI for this, and now they make slow pitches for spinners now. Yeah, we can clearly see what the issues are. We're in the transition phase, and it will take a few years to get back to. So we need fans to support international team 100%, and that's why I built Cricket Fanatics magazine. I built it so that we can stay and support the South African national team. And that's the reason why I refuse to go and talk about other teams, any other teams, because our Proteas need our support as best as possible. I need to make sure that I'm building a South African fan base that sticks and rallies behind the Proteas to keep that fire alive. As soon as I start talking about other things, our connection and our family that we are building here is going to start to be diversified too much, and we're not going to be able to give the support that the Proteas need from a South African standpoint to rally behind them. So I've made it South African Central, and then I'll venture into other franchises when the time is right, when this becomes monetized. I've always promised that. I was shocked to see Kensington Oval a spinning wicket yesterday, the bullring of the Caribbean. Why isn't Magala playing any cricket in the last 3 months? Guess no one has really picked him up, eh? What do you think about the American Cricket League? Stadiums look empty to me. How are they generating revenue? Is it good for cricket? I don't think that T20 leagues in general are good for cricket. I've said this before. I think one or two or three are good is good enough. I don't think we need one in every single country. And I do think that in the USA they've got a massive mountain to climb when it comes to cricket. First and foremost, not only are they introducing a new sport to a new audience, a new league as well, new players that a lot of Americans probably don't even know about. It's a whole lot of new at the launch of the one tournament. Cricket isn't a sport that I don't think a lot of Americans will know about the sport, and know a lot about the sport. It will be a very small pocket of people that actually know about cricket. So they're going to have to throw in a hell of a lot of advertising budget to gain awareness around the sport alone before they even start promoting the league. So that's something that needs to happen. And then they need to convince them, because they've got rival sports like baseball, which is they will think is pretty similar to cricket. So that's the rival ultimately. Cricket's going to have to compete against that baseball in the country. So I feel that they first need to promote cricket as a whole in America, and then they can start putting in money into the league itself, because I don't think the league itself, if people don't understand the sport, um, if that's going to help them. They should actually come watch our channel here, the Americans, and listen to us talk about cricket so they can get a better understanding of the game. Why would you play your T20 league SA20 right in the peak of summer when we usually play international teams? Better to play SA20 in October. The reason around that is because of the school holidays and university holidays. SA20 knew that if they do it during that period, more people are going to come to the stadiums, and that's how they're going to make their money. Um, October is a difficult time. It's the end of the year. People start to run out of money towards the end of the year as they're leading up into Christmas. So, um, and it's school time and all of those type of things. So it's difficult for them to market the league during that time. Even though I think that it could be successful if they do it in that period. I think that the first tournament has built enough traction for people to understand the brand and know what it's about, to want to go and watch games. Now, they did it in the holidays because that meant that even if they do day games in the week, people will go and flood the stadiums on a regular basis, because a lot of more people will be off on holiday, school holidays, universities will be on holiday as well. So there will definitely be people that come into the stadiums. They won't have to clash and only have night games, etc. They can run games during the day as well. So it is the best time, and that's why it works perfectly for our South African cricket team, because the period we play our blockbuster international series is during the holidays and when people are off. Lawrence, I'm thinking about going to India, but also could go to France for the Rugby World Cup. Lucky guy. Do you think the lack of trust in CSA administrators from the fans has a role in poor attendance in stadiums? I do think so, but I also think that this was happening before the lacking trust really elevated and accelerated. It's not possible to compare Steyn and Anderson. Different number of matches, more matches in England for Anderson, injuries, etc. Exactly. That's what I was trying to say. There's not a lot of players that you can put head to head and compare them. There aren't many. And even in, like, I use Ronaldo and Messi, for example. Ronaldo and Messi playing completely different positions, had different roles within the teams, played in different leagues. Um, it's very difficult to put them up against each other and say which one is better. Um, so it's like comparing Haaland and Mbappe at the moment and saying which one is better. It's difficult to be able to say so. One is a complete strike and one plays off the left. They both score a lot of goals, but that's basically the only thing. Also, Ronaldo played striker towards the end of his career. Messi didn't. So it's like it's very difficult to say who's the goat in things because it depends on what criteria you're talking about. Although Stein South said in the interview that Jimmy was a more skillful bowler than me. Dale Steyn is one of the most humble cricketers I've ever met. So I doubt you would have said anything. I would doubt he would have spoken about himself as being the best ever. He's not a guy that I don't feel that he's a guy that would say that about himself. He's a very, very humble guy. One of the nicest cricketers I've ever dealt with, met, interviewed, ever. Like, amazing human being. Um, what I respect about England is that they stuck with the attacking blueprint since after their shocking 2015 World Cup, whereas South Africa always JoJo around blueprint and strategy. We love complicating things. Who do you think must bat at 3 in Test? Keegan Peterson or Dezorzi? I think Dezorzi. I think Keegan is competing for the number 5 spot. England won't win a single game in India. A 5 Test match series against India in India playing like this will be a challenge. Just um, why haven't SA developed a good all rounder and good leg spinner in years? Leg spinners are very difficult to produce within South Africa. Our best wrist spinner of all time, Paul Adams and Imran Tahir, those are the two. Both were, look at the periods. First and foremost, Paul Adams was South African, played during apartheid, etc., and then came through the system. And then you have Imran Tahir that wasn't even South African. He was not even born here. So our conditions in South Africa are not necessarily conducive for wrist spinners. Generally speaking, our domestic scene doesn't produce that. They'll produce a lot of offies and left arm left arm orthodox spinners because the conditions suit that more than wrist spinners. We don't really have a lot of spinning conditions where wrist spinners are really going to dominate majority of the places in South Africa. So that's why we don't produce a lot of wrist spinners, in my opinion. When it comes to all rounders, I don't know because when I go to Kaya Majola weeks, majority of the time, a lot of the bowlers are all rounders at school level. But as soon as they come to domestic cricket, they tend to focus on a specific discipline, either batting or either bowling, and that becomes their major. So I don't know if it's coaches that tend to, because they want to try to get the best out of players as quick as possible, they tend to pay less attention to certain aspects of a player's game and utilize whatever they are strong in immediately. Or it is just players that think that focusing on one discipline will get them into Proteas teams faster. It could be one of those things. England even moved on from the likes of Anderson Broad in ODIs and T20Is after that 2015 World Cup, as they didn't form part of the new blueprint. We always seem to stick with players. We're not bold enough. Sharada says, who will SA play in the World Cup at number 7? Janssen and Linda can play at 8, but no one at 7. And Brewer's bowling isn't good enough for ODIs. That is the big question that everybody's been asking. Um, I think that Linda can play at 7. He's a batter before a bowler, as he said on our exclusive interview on this channel. He is a type of person that can play at 7. He's a batter before a bowler. I don't think a lot of people actually understand that. When it comes to George Linda, his batting is actually better than his bowling. The two greatest fast bowlers of this era is Anderson and Steyn. Anderson might have taken more wickets, but they're more complete of all conditions. We also can't compare them to other eras. Exactly. Lichle says, can you invite Lutus Pamla to the show? Because I believe he's an important cog in our fast bowling arsenal going forward. I think the biggest problem that Luther will have is his pace. He doesn't seem to go above 135. So that's the biggest problem. I really thought when he came into the scene that he was going to bowl really quickly, but his pace never seemed to take off. Who will be the premier spinner of South Africa in what format? Because currently it's Keshav Maharaj, I think. Khalid, any news on the report that should have come out of the T20? Enoch said it would have been done months ago, yet we're still waiting. We can ask him that when I get him on the show. I'm trying to get him for next week. We also got Malibonga Maketa on Monday at 7 o'clock, at 6 o'clock, guys. So please stay tuned for that as well. This is so harsh, but I know a lot of people who don't watch or go to stadiums anymore because of the politics in our cricket. It's not harsh at all. It's true. But I think that is also um, I don't think that that's the right way to do things. The players, if we want our if we want our cricket to improve, we can't stop supporting the Proteas. I mean, support the guys, complain about CSA, but still support the guys though by supporting them by watching games. That four match test series against Australia in 2018 was amazing. It was amazing. I watched it every single game live. The crowd during that test series was okay, but the Cape Town test was unforgettable but embarrassing as well. It was an amazing experience for me as a journal. I've covered every single game for that series. Doesn't CSA have risk analysis though? They should have known sponsors will pull out because of the SJN. I don't think they expected such a massive exit because of the SJN. The SJN had positive motives. It didn't have negative motives. They were trying to clean up the sport from a racial standpoint because cricket is quite racist in this country. There seems to be a lot of racism within our sport, within cricket. Behind the scenes at schools, at other levels and stuff, there's a lot of racism with our sport that I've witnessed personally firsthand. I'm not talking here just making assumptions. I've witnessed a lot of racism in stadiums amongst fans too. Hearing what people say about certain players, using words that we can't use anymore during this time period. So I don't know. I don't think they thought that people will break out so quickly. Why isn't CSA managing KG's workload? He has not been at his best in the last 2 years. Still, he is playing in all the leagues of the world because it's not CSA's decision completely. It's KG's decision as well. He also needs to make that decision to say, no, you know what, I'm going to take a rest. CSA is not going to force him to play in all those leagues around the world. He must make that decision and say, you know what, I'm not going to play so many leagues. I'm going to focus on international cricket. The team has to win in order to get some sponsors on the door. That's 100% true. That's also up to the players to win. Thanks you again for another super sticker, Neil Govender, and another one from you again coming in. Thanks a lot, Neil, for all that support. What happened to the Test series? We were supposed to have Australia in 2021. They postponed it and they never rescheduled it. Nobody knows. There are no local American playing in USA T20. The teams are full of players from India, Pakistan, and South Africa who have relocated to USA. Even the crowd is mostly South Asians. Exactly. That's the problem. America themselves do not know about the sport of cricket. So I think it was a stupid move to launch this without educating America about cricket first. And how do you do that? It's strange. Considering that, I think the best way to have done that would probably be to introduce cricket camps or cricket not camp or cricket camps would work, and also cricket what's the word I'm looking for? Not conventions, but clinics all around America and introduce young kids to cricket. I think that would have been a good step to start people um, to create an awareness around the sport before they take a new league there. That no, I mean, it's like it's like a new sport for them. Considering that Dwan Olivier was selected in the Proteas for his pace, do you think a lack of pace has 100% do think so? What did you think of Smith run out, in or out? I missed that, to be honest. Um, I've been really busy today, guys. I haven't had a chance to watch any cricket um, because I've been trying to get the magazine ready and out. Junaid and Dawood and Thomas Kaiber are recent leg spinners who CSA can invest in. Sean Van Berg may be too old now for the Proteas cap. It's good to see Paul Adams is now involved with CSA. Hopefully, he can help in producing wrist spinners. True. Make the stadiums attractive so that people can go with their families, reduce ticket prices, have more food and entertainment for kids, have prize stalls, create a carnival atmosphere. 100% correct, Ashkai. I've even suggested that to many administrators too. Guys, my head is starting to pound a lot more. Thanks for the super chats, Neil Governor. Thank you to everybody for asking me questions. I really enjoyed doing the show, and it actually calmed me down to an extent. It made things a little bit better with regards to my throbbing, but my headache's still there, unfortunately. So I'm going to try to, my tablet is going to kick in probably over the next 10 minutes, 20 minutes. And I'm going to have to just take a nap because I've been up since, well, I didn't sleep much last night. Was up early morning trying to get work done, trying to get things done with regards to the magazine as well. So I think I need a nap and I'll be okay and okay again. But thanks a lot for the support. Thanks a lot for the show, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to Cricket Fanatics Magazine monthly. Every issue is 100% free, straight to your inbox every month. The link is on the screen as well as in the description. I'd also like you guys to please subscribe to the channel. We are so close to 4,000 subscribers. I think we're only 60 away. So please go ahead, subscribe to this channel, click that notification bell as we go to our road for 4,000 subscribers. Please go ahead and do so. Also, smash the like button, comment, and share so we can get into recommended feeds. And also become a patron today if you want to support the channel. If you want to help us with regards to on our mission to get to India, you could help by supporting us by becoming a patron today. That all that money that you give on Patreon and you support us with goes back into the business. It helps me be able to tour. It helps me to be able to get new equipment when my computer's broke. Like my computer broke and I'm using a backup computer at the moment. Can't afford at the moment to replace it. So I had to save up for a new one. So becoming a patron is important. It really helps me out as well with the company to be able to do these things and continue doing what I'm doing over here. The link is on the screen as well as in the description. Okay, guys, thanks a lot for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you guys again Monday for an exclusive interview with Coach Maketa, the under 19 coach, to get some insight into the under 19 side and what his plans are for the future of our young talent. See you all. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your evening and enjoy your weekend as much as you can. And I'll see you guys on the flip side very, very soon. Peace out.